Hey guys, welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. I hope you had a beautiful weekend. It was Canadian Thanksgiving this weekend. So, for all my Canadians out there listening, watching, happy Thanksgiving. At this time of year, I always can't get over how quickly everything changes. So I live in Southern Ontario, which means we obviously get seasons. And some of you I know don't experience that phenomenon, but all of our trees right now are like the most beautiful orange, red, yellow color. Soon it will look awful. So all the leaves will fall, it'll be dead and brown and gross. And then winter will come. And we'll cry about that together on the podcast from December till March, basically. But we were driving to my parents' house, which is actually the cottage, and we got to drive more north and just see all the beautiful colors. And it was such a reminder to just kind of like stop and enjoy the moment and appreciate the beauty around you. And coming out of our boot camp week, which if you joined me last week for boot camp, I hope you had the best time. I had the best time. But our last day of boot camp, we talk about mindset. And being able to then just kind of like cap off boot camp with some family time, this beautiful drive, with just getting to like pause for a second and not be in the swirl and in the thick of things, was such a reminder of how important having those moments are. And so I wanted, even though we're talking about sleep today, so I guess this is kind of interconnected, but I really wanted you all to just kind of like take a second and figure out for you, like, what do you need right now to kind of have that pocket, that moment of time of being present, being in the moment, putting your foot down, enjoying what's around you. And I say this with all kinds of empathy and love, and something that we talk about inside Fertility Confidence Method all the time, every single week, is how much of a challenge that can be in the fertility journey. And so hopefully this maybe is just like a little reminder to you to take a second this week, get outside, get in nature. If you're one of the lucky ones that like lives near the ocean, use that to your advantage. Connect with yourself, connect with your partner, get off social media, spend some time with your family, like whatever it is that fills your cup. Not all of those are going to be cup filling activities for everybody, but even just driving up to our Thanksgiving celebration felt like a cup filling moment for me. I'm getting to spend some time with my family and just look around and be like, wow, we live in this most beautiful place, especially coming home from Hawaii, where I came home back to Ontario and was like, wow, when can I get back to Hawaii? Like, who wants to live in Ontario? But I was so quickly reminded that this is such a great time of year to live here. So that's my little spiel. That has quite literally nothing to do with what we're talking about today. Thanks for joining and hanging out with me. We're going to talk about sleep. I can't believe this is podcast episode 135. When I was putting that down in my notes this week, I was like, that's a lot. Like, have I talked about sleep before? I don't know. Maybe I have. At this point, I'm not sure. But we had this conversation inside FCM quite a bit this month, I think, because we had a few more male fertility cases come into our hands. So when we're putting plans together, we take a very whole couple approach. So it's not just focusing on you, but also focusing in on your partner. And so we had to dig up some of the sleep research. And I thought to myself, we should probably talk about this on the podcast. So when we chat about like laying the foundations, and we talked about this in boot camp, we want to build this house to support our fertility journey. And a lot of times we skip to the second level and we skip to the roof. We Google, what should I take? What supplements help with X? What do I do? What supplements do I take to boost my fertility? And realistically, when we're just adding supplements, but we're not talking about the other pieces, we're trying to build a house without a foundation and without a first floor. And a lot of times when couples come in and work with us in FCM, they're doing a lot of things already to support their fertility journey, and they feel like they've tried everything and nothing has worked. But a lot of times they're trying to build their support house without a bottom floor. And then we take them through our fertility accelerator process. And the premise of accelerator is to build that foundation, to build that ground floor. And it's very personalized and individualized for the person based on where you are at right now. Like you might already have half of a foundation, 3/4 of a foundation. You might not have any foundation. But what do I mean when I'm actually saying those words? I'm talking about our 4 main pillars of health: sleep, movement, mindfulness or stress management, and nutrition. So these are the 4 pieces that we want to focus on first and foremost before we're actually jumping to that supplement step. Supplements are great, okay? We use supplements in our care plans. We recommend supplements to our clients that are strategic. So we call it, in FCM, we call it strategic supplementation. Not every single product is right for every single person. We want to figure out what is the root cause issue that is holding you back from getting pregnant, and then how do we strategize a solution based on your unique fertility identifiers. And that might include supplements, but only if, and those supplements truly are really only going to work for you if we've laid that foundational groundwork. So today I want to focus on sleep. And the foundational groundwork is something we really do cover and focus in our free boot camp. So if you missed our 5-day boot camp and you want to make sure you don't miss another, the wait list is open. I'll pop the link in the show notes for you. But we don't really talk about sleep. So I think that's where this idea came from, because we talk a lot about nutrition. We talk a little bit about exercise. We talk a little bit about all of them, but we mainly focus on the nutritional aspect. And then we work in the mindset aspect. But we really don't talk a lot about sleep. And it's such an underrated tool and treatment when it comes to improving your fertility. And I think the reason for that is because it's sleep. Like we all do it. Everyone knows you have to sleep. You cannot just stay awake forever. That will not work for you. You have to sleep. And because sleep is just this process that happens, that everyone does, we don't really think about it as a treatment. We don't really think about it as something that we prescribe to ourselves or your practitioner prescribes to you. But the research shows us that having good, adequate, restful sleep is incredibly important for proper hormone balance and for both female and male factor fertility. So let's start with the women really quick. We don't have or at least I didn't have it in my resource manager, but we don't have a good direct correlation study, like a randomized control trial. We have a couple of really interesting studies with men that I do think we've talked about on the podcast before, but I'll bring them back into today's episode as well. But how we know that sleep impacts the female aspect of fertility is basically in relation to how it impacts cortisol and general just hormone balance. When we sleep, it's like our body's time to reset. It's our body's time to finish up all the metabolic processes, use up all the glucose, deal with all the insulin from when you were eating through the day. It's our body's time to just have a break from the cortisol spikes and the adrenaline spikes and get ready for the day. We commit our day to short and long-term memory. There's a lot of brain neuropathway stuff that is happening. It's when we just finally get our system gets a breather, basically, for lack of a better word. And without it, we start to see impacts in these areas. We start to see impacts in brain neurochemicals. We start to see impacts in our body's ability to manage glucose and insulin and more metabolic damage. We start to see impacts in how our body uses cortisol and or then how it impacts our thyroid, how that impacts our estrogen, how that impacts our progesterone. We see a cascade in the entire endocrine system, which is our hormone pathways, our hormone system. So when I say we need to sleep, what does that mean? Because I think everyone has these different ideas based on what's worked for them in the past. And I see this with clients all the time. They're like, oh yeah, I've only ever really needed 6 hours of sleep. I feel fine. I'm not tired. First off, weird and great for you. If I only got 6 hours of sleep, I would be exhausted. But a part of that too is just habit, right? If your body's just used to living off of that, It kind of learns how to adapt, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's what is best for you. And so the research has found that the sweet spot is about 7.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep a night. And then we can go down this whole rabbit hole of like deep sleep, REM sleep. What does that look like? Because you might be someone who sleeps 9 hours a night, but if you're not actually getting into a deep, restful sleep, you're still not really reaping the benefits of what good sleep is going to bring to you. So really making sure we're giving an ample amount of time to have restful sleep. Now, the other piece to consider is bedtime. And this is a big topic of conversation with clients who are having trouble getting pregnant, both men and women, in terms of like when to go to bed. And it's always something we ask in our private practice clients as well when we're talking about sleep, because a lot of times we're seeing complaints of fatigue as offshoots of other complaints. You know, someone's coming to work with us for X and they're really tired. Someone's trying to get pregnant, it's not working, and they're so tired they have no energy. So we want to decipher, is that energy, is that low energy a sign or symptom of something else? And or are you just not sleeping or not eating enough? So we want to know when you go to bed. And with cortisol, which is our stress hormone, we want to have the most cortisol in the morning. So when we wake up, we have this spike of cortisol. It helps us get out of bed. It gives us the energy that we need to feel like we can just take on the day. And then it's slowly going to decrease through the day and into the night. It should be the lowest rate before bed. Our system, our circadian rhythm, is really primed to go to bed between 8 and 10 p.m., which for a lot of people, that probably feels a little early, right? I know it used to for me, it does not now. Now I'm like, can I get to bed at 8:30? Sign me up. But a lot of people, that feels quite early. And what happens when we're up past that like set point of time that our body is really primed for sleep is our nervous system is really smart. It's like, oh, we're not done yet. Okay, let's keep going. And around 10:30, we'll get this like secondary surge of cortisol when we haven't given those sleep cues to our system that we're winding down. If we're still up, you know, scrolling, working, cleaning, watching TV, like whatever it is we're doing at night, we'll get that second wind essentially, right? Where you're like, I'm not tired. I have all this energy. And then we're now looking at usually like a 12 p.m. bedtime. And that might be significantly shortening the amount of good hours of sleep that we can get, because research shows that we actually get deeper, more restful sleep earlier on in the evening and night versus those early morning hours. So it's really common for people to start waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Maybe they have to pee. Maybe you go back to sleep really easily, but maybe you don't. Or something just startles you more easily, or your partner's rolling around startles you more easily. We're in a lighter state of sleep in those early hours. So by staying up later, you might still get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, but you're actually shortening the amount of deep and REM sleep that you can potentially get. So figuring out that sweet spot for bedtime so that your body has enough time to really get that good restorative sleep is going to help. The other thing that I mentioned is the importance of sleep when it comes to metabolic health. Making sure we have adequate time that we're fasted to utilize the glucose and insulin from the day before. And if we're not sleeping very well, we're eating late, then we're really just not giving our body that time to just deal with the rest of the stuff. So the rest of the stuff, that's so ambiguous. The glucose and the insulin from our food, from what we ate earlier. So if you're someone who has insulin resistance, if you are someone who is struggling to lose weight, if you are someone who maybe has thyroid issues and you aren't considering good, healthy sleep habits as a treatment principle, we're missing a foundational piece of your house. So insulin, glucose, metabolic health, cortisol, we're getting secondary surges of cortisol when we do not want them. We're not giving our nervous system enough time to really just wind down and do its thing. And so we're entering the next day likely already just geared up for stress. And our sleep bucket, our need for sleep drastically increases when we are stressed and burnt out. We just need that wind down time. So I get that sometimes having stress can keep you from falling asleep. So if you're sitting there going, well, Dr. Kelsey, trust me, I'd love to sleep, but I have insomnia and it's worse when I'm stressed and anxious. This is when we really want to start working on our overall sleep hygiene and general good sleep tips. So making sure you're getting into bed at the same time every night and getting up at the same time every morning, and training that circadian rhythm, training that cortisol pattern, and really helping with that consistent flow of what to expect is actually a good way to help support insomnia. But it takes time and practice, right? And trust me, I get it. It's really annoying when you go to bed at 9 and you lie there till 11. Eventually your body will get the hint, especially if you are someone who's been up late for many years. It takes time. And so what we were always taught in school, and what I always recommend my clients that works every time, is that if you are someone who's right now up until midnight and you're hearing me say, we need to try to get to bed earlier to help with all of the things, the best way to do that is to actually go earlier to bed in 15-minute increments over the span of a couple of months. So it's a slow process. Your body is not just going to be like, oh, goody, and go to sleep really easily when it's used to being up late, because we've trained our body to stay up late. Now we have to train our body to go to sleep earlier. And the easiest and less frustrating way to do that is to move backwards in 15-minute increments. So if you're typically climbing into bed at 11:30, for the next week, climb into bed at 11:15, and then 11, and then 10:45, and then 10:30. Just slowly work your way backwards in whatever way feels best for you. But that's the way that I find my clients really respond the best to. So getting into bed at the same time, getting up at the same time every morning, making sure your bedroom is tidy and appealing and a good temperature and really dark. Like, these things seem really basic, but they actually can make the world of difference. And so if you have things that are emitting a lot of light into your room, I recommend taking them out if you can, covering them up if you can't, making sure you have good dark curtains. This is the one thing that we personally actually aren't good at. And now that it's winter, it's fine because the sun is setting earlier. So it's dark at like 7. So it's dark in our room before we get into bed. We live in the country, so there's nothing in our back bedroom window. We back out onto farmer's field. So the only time there's light coming in is if our neighbors are outside and they have their lights on. And that doesn't really bug me. And it's usually like once in a while, and I'll just put the curtain down if I have to. But we actually leave our curtains up so that I can wake up with the sun. And so coming back from our trip, we actually had the curtains down, probably because my parents were in there and they had the curtains down and we just never put them up. And it was so weird for me when I went to wake up. First off, I was jet lagged to hell, so that didn't help. But I also wasn't getting that same light stimulation to help me wake up. So when it was time to get up, it just felt 10 times worse. So we don't follow that rule, and maybe you have some flexibility as well with like blackout curtains or no. But if you live in the city, if there's a lot of light pollution, closing those blinds, getting it as dark as you can in your room is so important for falling to sleep. I think waking with the sun is great for me. And we also see in the research that that's good. When I lived in a basement, I still actually have it in my closet, but when I lived in the basement through university, I had an alarm clock that would gradually light up. So if I set my alarm for 6, at 5:30, it would click on and then it would gradually light up until 6. So when my alarm actually went off, I've been basically getting light stimulation for 30 minutes beforehand to just help your body be like, it's time. It's really great for that cortisol awakening response. So if you can't do that with the actual sun and your curtains and situation and how that works, or where you live, what have you, then there's actually really great clocks on the market that you can get that use like a good proper light bulb to mimic that sun, which is great. Cool temperature, clean room, mostly because if you walk into a bedroom that is cluttered, that is messy, that you don't like going into, are you going to feel comfortable in there to go to sleep? No. If you have a monkey brain and then you're looking around your room and you're seeing piles of crap of all the shit that you have to deal with, is your brain going to turn off? No, it's going to just keep thinking about all the things that you need to do. So this was actually something we did on the weekend when we got back. Our friends over at Needed so generously offered the Fertility Confidence podcast listeners 20% off their first order with the coupon code Dr. Kelsey. You can grab the link for that over in the show notes. And because this is an episode on sleep, I actually wanted to highlight that they do have an amazing stress and sleep bundle over on their website, thisisneeded.com. Sleep is something that so many people struggle with. And I really love the sleep product that they've put together, mostly because it is melatonin free. We love melatonin for fertility, but it's not great for everybody. It's safe and it's incredibly effective. And it actually tastes really good as well. You can have it as like a nice little nighttime beverage, a little wine time beverage, basically to just like turn that brain down a little bit, make that noise that you might be feeling that's keeping you up at night a little bit quieter, and put it in as part of your self-care routine. So go over to thisisneeded.com, check out their options, check out their sleep and stress bundle, and use that code Dr. Kelsey for 20% off. Okay, let's talk about the male side of things real quick. So we actually do have some really fascinating research and how sleep impacts sperm specifically. So we see in the literature that men who sleep less than 7 hours a night typically have lower levels of testosterone and lower sperm concentration. And then we take that same group of men, we make them sleep just for 1 more hour. So it's not this big, huge change. 1 more hour of sleep, and there's a drastic improvement in both testosterone and sperm concentration. So we're seeing a direct correlation, not only between low quality and low hours of sleep impacting the amount of sperm that are available, but also impacting hormone production. And it's likely the hormone production that is then in turn impacting the health and quantity of the sperm. And this is a big one for men because women typically, not always, but typically I feel like women just intuitively know they need more sleep, right? And so they're less likely to like self-sabotage their sleep, whereas men typically are more like identifying with the concept of being a night owl, right? Like oftentimes men are like, oh, I'm a night owl. Like it's normal. I stay up till 1. I'm fine. It's always been like this. But they're also not feeling like the best version of themselves. And why is that? Because they likely have low testosterone from years and years and years of poor sleep. So the same principles in terms of sleep hygiene for women, they are true for men as well. Same time of bed. We want to have a good sleep hygiene routine going into bed. So low screens, if we can, block that blue light if you can, have a bit of a wind down routine, get into bed in a room that feels ready and comfortable for sleep, and give yourself an ample amount of time to get that deep sleep. And knowing that we do our best deep sleep between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., we don't want to be going to bed at midnight or 1. We're really losing out on that opportunity to get in that deep, restorative, and restful sleep. And if you know already, if you've had a semen analysis done and you know that concentration is low and we are on a laundry list of supplements, but you're not sleeping well, you're not exercising, you're not eating super well, we're not managing your stress, those supplements really aren't going to do anything for you because we're not laying the foundation. We have to set that foundation for health before we can really get anything out of all the stuff you're spending money on. And sleep is a big piece of that. And so from a hormone perspective, we have that direct correlation from a fertility angle with lack of sleep, but it's the same kind of cortisol disruption that we talk about with women that we can see with men. It can still have a big impact on the nervous system and your body's cortisol factors and the metabolic health piece. We're humans are humans, whether they're men or women, glucose and insulin, it's all the same. So similar to women, if we're not giving adequate time for our body to use that glucose and insulin, we're potentially worsening insulin resistance. We're potentially increasing blood sugar dysregulation. And we also have the literature to support that metabolic health piece being a factor for male fertility, and not just sperm quantity, but quality as well. We're seeing increase in DNA fragmentation, in motility, and in morphology issues when we have metabolic health issues. So when we have diabetes, high cholesterol, poor blood sugar regulation, insulin resistance, those types of things. So all of that, we would think immediately like, oh, nutrition, we have to eat better. Yes, with metabolic health stuff, of course, we have to look and focus on nutrition. And there are other aspects to that foundational piece of health that matters. So hopefully this was helpful for you. Please, if you are new to the podcast, go back, check out some old episodes. If you're here for the male factor stuff, we have tons of male fertility support episodes. We have lots of great places for you to start. Give us a like and subscribe. Send this episode to a friend or family member that you think needs to hear this. And I will see you guys on the other side.